Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the astrological chart of Olivia Newton-John. As I record this in August 2022, she recently passed away. And so obviously, they have all kinds of videos that are promoted on YouTube. And I was also looking at some myself. And growing up in the 70s, this is particularly relevant to my growing up years. And I know for a lot of people, they feel the same way. And she was quite young to pass away, even though she was in her early 70s. Nowadays, that's not so old, really, because people are living longer. But in any case, a few things that I wanted to really explore in looking at her chart. First of all, the words that keep coming up to describe her over and over again are she was so beautiful, she was so classy, she was so nice or kind, and these are adjectives that I just keep hearing about her, or that she was very wholesome. And I wanted to see what astrological influences affected that. I also wanted to see if there was anything in her chart that specifically showed that she would become famous, that she would have singing talent, and things like that. And when I do these celebrity chart interpretations, I oftentimes just jump right into it. But this time I really had this objective of looking at these specific things. And also another thing that I noticed, or that occurred to me is that I don't know, I might be, this might be kind of a landmine here, because one time I was talking about Libras, and she was a sun in Libra. And I said that they are beautiful, but they're not sexy. And it wasn't an insult. What I meant was that Libra is a sign that is very um, pristine in their beauty. It's kind of like if you think of the statue of Venus. Um, well, that might not be a good example because sometimes Venus is nude and more earthy in how she is depicted. Um, well, in terms of like famous people, like Gwyneth Paltrow is a Libra woman. Now you could say, oh yes, she's gorgeous, but she doesn't seem like um, earthy in terms of sexuality in that sense. There's like kind of this ethereal beauty. That's how I would put it. Because Taurus is also ruled by Venus, and it has like an earthier uh, kind of a way that it's represented. But that is, I said that once, and I think I hurt some Libra people's feelings, and I didn't mean to. But this is kind of what I'm sensing with Olivia Newton-John. However, when she was performing, there were times that she seemed quite suggestive, and I thought, wow, where's that coming from? So I wanted to look in her chart to see if that was something that was a part of, her makeup as well, because when somebody has the sun in Libra, they can easily have inner planets in Scorpio, or Scorpio rising. And sure enough, she has Mars in Scorpio. I didn't notice that the first time that I looked for it. So anyway, I just think that's a very interesting topic to explore. Um, the first thing that we can say, well, let me just go through her personal planets and her rising sign. Her sun sign is in Libra, ruled by Venus. But people who have Libra sun or maybe rising tend to be physically attractive. Moon in Cancer, both of these are early degrees, but they do form a square. Um, Suzanne Summers has the same sun and moon sign and also was set up as a sex symbol. Olivia Newton-John, I don't know if she was really considered a sex symbol, though, even though I'm sure there were plenty of men who found her attractive, and I've read plenty of creepy comments on YouTube from some of them, but I just don't know. Like there were certain people that were set up specifically as sex objects, and she almost seemed too wholesome to really fit that bill, but she was definitely a beautiful woman. Mercury, 29th degree of Libra, so on the cusp of Scorpio. Venus in Leo and Mars in Scorpio. Close enough to form a square between Venus and Mars, and rising sign Virgo. Now that's the one that I really want to focus on because the rising sign can be the appearance, and Virgo is the maiden, the chaste maiden. You will often find that women who have, or you could say men too, who have Virgo rising will tend to be fair in their, of course, there's going to be Virgo rising of all races and, the skin complexions. But I would say, even if it's a person of color, they will still have this kind of chaste, aura or actual physical appearance. And it can be like this natural beauty attractiveness that has kind of a healthy glow. They have a healthy glow to them. And this is because it's an earth sign, and Virgo women will tend to wear very little makeup. They're not going to tend to, pile on the war paint or anything like that. I'm not saying that they're all going to go all natural completely, but they're just not going to be heavily made up usually. And so she certainly was like that. But another thing that I think can play into her appearance is that a comment that I kept reading over and over again on YouTube was, she looks so young for her age. Like, I saw different interviews when she was like 40 years old or in her late 30s or whatever, and she still looked very youthful. And even when she was older than that. And I think that's because her ruler is Mercury, because that is the ruler of Virgo. So the same thing would apply to Gemini. And usually that's the sign that everybody sees as Peter Pan, or that kind of eternal youth. But I would imagine that Virgo is the same. And another famous person who has Virgo rising is Paul McCartney. And he likewise had a boyish, he really, even in his 40s and 50s, he looked very, very young for his age. I think after his first wife, Linda, passed away, that he started to look a little bit older, but even after that, he still looked younger than his age. Now he's pushing 80. No, actually, I think he just turned 80. So, you can't do that forever, but still, I mean, for somebody who's 80 years old, he looks damn good. So anyway, that's that. And what I would say with the top three, the sun, moon, and rising, is that the moon in Cancer is going to be a very feminine type of individual, woman, and she is going to have a very gentle emotional nature, which she certainly did. Now, in addition to that, Olivia had a conjunction between the Sun and Neptune in the first house. And that can give somebody who is very dreamy. I think that, Neptune rules photography. So but also illusion. So this person can bewitch people with her appearance. And with the sun, that's going to be the self that is sold. So when the sun is in the first house, it's really great for an entertainer because they can be very confident, but also have that desire to promote oneself. Um, I was mentioning before that Freddie Mercury had his sun in the 12th house. I'll have to look at his chart again though, because I'm assuming it was not equal houses. But I still like am puzzled by that because I guess he had the sun and the rising sign in Virgo, which is so far from flashy that's not even funny. And I thought that he might have Leo rising or something. And then the sun was in the 12th house, and he was so bombastic and extroverted when it came to his performances. So sometimes it doesn't quite, work out the way you think it's going to. But I would say that if you look at some of the interviews with Olivia Newton-John, she was definitely, for somebody who is a Libra, she definitely had kind of a gentle, almost shy demeanor. She did not have this kind of a cocky attitude. And sometimes somebody with the sun in the first house can easily have that. And it's not necessarily offensive, it's not narcissistic, but it is because they are very outgoing and they're very confident. But when you have the sun in conjunction with Neptune, you're going to naturally be a lot more ethereal and obviously spiritual. But what I mean by that is that the ego doesn't need to be pampered or anything like that. The person will be naturally humble, in other words. Remember that Neptune is the ruler of the 12th house, and that has to do with spiritual matters, past life situations, and higher realms. So when it's in the first house, it kind of spiritualizes that person's persona. And from what I understand, she was actually involved in some kind of spiritual, I don't know if you'd say practice or belief system, but I don't know exactly what it is. I'll have to look that up because I didn't know anything about that before. Like, I never heard that she was into anything like that. But I wouldn't be surprised now that I know that she has a conjunction between the Sun and Neptune. But as somebody who's a famous person, this can give them a real sense of being part of the whole of the, I was going to say the human race, but in terms of the spirit. In other words, knowing that even though she was a celebrity and therefore elevated in terms of, people giving her all this attention and praise and things like that, and that she was more well known, she had more money than a lot of people, that she could probably feel that all is one. And that doesn't always happen, obviously, with celebrities. Some people, it goes to their head and they get arrogant and things like that. I saw one of the videos that I did watch of her. I don't know when it was taken, but it was pretty recently, probably within the last few years. And she was walking around, and I think it was in Australia, in this, public area, and people were walking by her, and then finally these girls recognized her and they were going crazy and they were hugging her and stuff, and she was like, kind of laughing and stuff, but she didn't she was just walking among people and somebody was filming her, so it wasn't like people might not have been, drawn to her being filmed. Maybe nowadays it's so normal to be filmed that nobody pays attention. But it was like she wasn't like saying, "Look at me." Oh, people aren't recognizing me. She was like, there was like a humility. So that was one of the things that I noticed that I thought was really interesting. So, in trying to answer my questions about, I've already talked about her appearance, but in terms of her singing ability and her fame, I would point to her sun being in the first house and even being in conjunction with Neptune. That can give that sense of like the fantasy and the reality of the persona being joined as one and being what is projected. So it's like a seductive, like a, well, I don't know if seductive is the right word, but an aura. Um, we'll just say like a seductive aura that has to do with fame. In the third house, I haven't seen any indication from any websites or books that I have read about singing in the third house, but it's a logical extension of talking and other forms of communication. She had Mars and Chiron here. So it's very weird about Chiron because Chiron can indicate trauma of some sort. Even Mars can have an aggressive influence. So, for instance, if you have brothers and sisters and you have Mars in the third house, you may have a lot of fighting and maybe they even beat you up. And maybe, with Chiron and Mars, maybe they beat you up and your parents side with them. They kind of like, it's almost like they're an agent for violence from the parents or something. I don't really remember. I don't know if she was an only child. I think she might have been, but I have no idea. I read her autobiography and I had to give up because it was too boring. She just seemed like she had a pretty normal life, but she is the granddaughter. She was the granddaughter of Max Born, who was one of the, I guess, scientists when it came to the nuclear bomb or something like that, which is really weird because you hear about these people that are famous and they're connected to other famous people. And one of the things that kind of like is unsettling is, there's talk about bloodlines and things like that of people who have prominent positions and they find themselves, connected to other people who have prominent positions. And one of the things that I noticed, not just with her, but at least one other celebrity, but I'm sure there were, multiple, was about something that suggests abuse, even though in the person's life there's no evidence of that. In her case, she has she has Mars square Pluto, which is a big one for that, and it could be quite violent and brutal. And also, even having Neptune in the first house, I could see as somebody who came into life with very chaotic or confusing conditions. She was born in England, but then moved to Australia with her family. I can't remember what her father did. I think he might have been in academia, but I just don't remember. So that I think that's why they moved. But in any case, I think she was separated from her father for a period of time. Um, and she also had a conjunction between Mars and Chiron, and it was in that third house, which can be about communication. So it can be this thing of like shut up if you know what's good for you. So and by the way, her Mars and Chiron are in Scorpio. So that has its own set of its own can of worms of what that represents. Very secretive and very much the shadow element um, represented. And in her eighth house, which is Scorpio's house, she has the North Node. So that might have been something that she had to work with these shadow elements for some reason. Um, and, I'm not going to, I don't want to even go there in terms of what that could represent with the shadow elements, but this is something that some of us believe will be revealed at some time that has to do with a lot of people who are famous. And well, I'll just say like trauma based mind control is what I was really kind of alluding to. But I don't know. I'm not saying that she was mind controlled, but people in the entertainment industry, it's almost like in some cases that is what is being suggested that is going on, and that these people who control the like the entertainment industry and things like that they use these people when you're trauma when you have trauma based mind control. You can have alters, you can have different personalities that are used. In Olivia Newton-John's case, it doesn't look like she was in that particular situation. You think of somebody like Britney Spears, that is an obvious example of that. I'm even wondering about somebody like Marilyn Monroe, whose own mother came to, had mental problems herself. And, Marilyn ended up getting involved with some very powerful people. And that may have actually led to her early demise. So the point being that people can be presented to the public in a certain way to be able to be used as further conditioning for certain agendas that are of a dark nature. Olivia Newton-John doesn't seem to fit that bill, but I just wanted to bring this out because that kind of concerned me. I was thinking, wow, I wonder if something did happen to her. But she does have Mars, or she did have Mars in Scorpio. So that can be a very strong, desiring nature. And I had to laugh because her husband, her first husband, um, was a dancer in the movie Xanadu. She had a daughter with him. And if you see this guy, and he was younger than her, and the press made a, yeah, I think the press made a big deal about it because that was not necessarily that common in the 80s. It was starting to be more common, but that was when you would usually see the man was older than the woman. And this guy was just like a total stud. I just saw something yesterday, and he had a bare chest, totally buff, you know, putting his thumb in his blue jeans like he's about to pull them off. And so that marriage did not last. She also got involved with a man that disappeared. And, there's some talk that he just faked his own death so that he could avoid his debts. But his debts didn't seem that extensive for somebody who was married to a woman with a lot of money. So I don't even know if that would be the case, but somebody said that he had another partner. Maybe he didn't want to hurt Olivia, so he did something by leaving her for another woman by faking his own death. Like that wouldn't hurt her, which is crazy. But yeah, they have never found his body. But I always thought that was an odd situation. And if you go on Wikipedia, they do not list him as one of her partners, which is odd too, because he was in her life for a substantial chunk of time. And I don't know if Olivia asked Wikipedia to omit his, his inclusion as one of her partners or not. If she did do something like that, it would suggest that she knew that he did, in fact, fake his death, because I don't think that she would kind of deny being in a relationship with him or reject that part of her life unless she was um, angry at what he did. So it's very hard to gauge that and to know what is going on. But that's strange. So she had some kind of like a little bit of strange things surrounding her. Uh, uh, Her first husband ran away with the babysitter. And one of the things I want to note about that is that people who are Libras, they can be very successful, but I notice that it's it seems to be par for the course that they can have romantic relationships that are chaotic. And my sense of that is that the there's an overemphasis placed on relationships to begin with. And when you place an overemphasis on something, you're kind of giving away your power and you're saying that this is the most important thing in my life. And I feel like that is a risky thing to do. We should never put some relationship that high on the pedestal of our lives. Another interesting thing is a square between Uranus and the ascendant. And usually, if somebody has that, you would think of somebody who's a nerd, a geek, dressing really bizarrely. Somebody like Janis Joplin, although I'm not saying that she had this, but somebody who was out of step with her times in terms of how she looked. Now, is there anybody that was more in alignment with what the public would appreciate than Olivia Newton-John? She was physically beautiful. She was elegant. So why would there be that? Because perhaps her true self was not what the image was. Maybe that was a very elegant image. And maybe, she was somebody who was a profound thinker or whatever, and she was trapped within this certain look that, in a way, may have limited her options in terms of show business because she might have been kind of typecast in the same way that somebody like Suzanne Summers, although that was a little bit of a different situation because in a way she was being blackballed. But there are examples where somebody is primarily seen as a sex symbol or something like that, so they would never be considered for something else. Farrah Fawcett did try to fight that, and she did a movie called The Burning Bed, and she was able to show that she was more than just a pretty face. But when I was reflecting on Olivia Newton-John's career, I realized she really didn't um, have much of a career in the movies beyond Grease, as Xanadu, yes, but I believe that was, widely panned as, quite a bomb of a movie. I don't know if it did well in the box office wise, but after that, that was like 1979 or 1980. What did she do after that? So she was a celebrity, but I don't think that she was able to parlay her earlier success into a long-lasting career, and so that might have worked against her. Ironically, her looks and her demeanor, the way that she presented herself. Um, and the other thing too is that her Uranus formed a conjunction with the midheaven, And which I'm kind of surprised that it did. It seems kind of far away from it. It's a pretty wide orb. I'm just going by what they're saying. I think that it's a little bit of a stretch that it forms a conjunction, but it is in the 10th house. And it is in conjunction. Her Uranus was in conjunction. The moon was in conjunction with Uranus. So being a Libra and then having a conjunction between the moon and Uranus, and yet it being in Cancer, to me is almost like a disconnect, because uh, the moon is very emotional. But when, because it's in conjunction with Uranus, there is something that is very detached within the person. And so maybe they give the appearance of having strong emotions, but they really have that part of themselves that is detached emotionally. And perhaps that all that attracted that situation that she dealt with this man that disappeared from her. And even with her first husband, you never know exactly, why things happen the way that they do. And it's in the 10th house, so it's about the fame. The moon in the 10th, sun in the 10th can be fame too, but the moon in the 10th is something that is, to me, really indicative of fame, because people, the person may have this emotional connection with people on a mass scale. And even in her 11th house, which deals with the collective, she has a conjunction between uh, Venus and Pluto. That can be somebody who is popular with the masses, but with Pluto, there's a power. So that can indicate fame. So popularity is one thing, but when you wield a certain power, that takes it to the next level. And with Uranus in the 10th, there's almost like this sense of something happening, I wouldn't say randomly, but a twist of fate, I don't know about a fluke, but something happening that's unpredictable. And technology is connected to Uranus, so through television and what have you. She went on television from a very early age. I was just watching something where she was only 16 years old, and it's so freaky because I would have never thought to even look for films of her from the 60s, but she was working at it for a long time before she achieved popularity, but that was her route to getting there. And again, there's a term, telegenic, somebody who's very photogenic for the um, big screen or the television. And that somebody, that's how you can get ahead. Doesn't mean you don't have other talents, but it doesn't hurt for sure. A square between the moon and Neptune can lead to giving your affections to the wrong person, being distorted in emotions. So when you fall in love with the wrong person, then you kind of um, are making excuses why you should love that person. And luckily, it seemed that she found a stable love at the end of her life. And I don't know how long she was with this second husband, but it was a number of years. And I think they did share interests together, which is very important. Um, but I think I'm going to leave it there. I could keep going on, but it doesn't really make sense because I don't want to do too long of a thing. I just wanted to kind of answer some of my own questions about her. All right. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Thanks for listening. Bye.